Okay, and we are back on. And Gary wanted me to ask you a little bit more about your work background because you were talking to me about it before we actually started the interview. And I want to know if we could go over that again. You said that you initially started working here for 2 years and then you left and went into the service and came back. Can you give me that whole story again about how you started? You were here.
Well, February the 6th, February 2nd was my birthday, and so February the 6th, I started hiring in February 2nd and went over there. And
this was what year? I'm sorry.
That's 1945.
Okay.
And they cemented in line, you know. I missed out on 4 days seniority. My hiring date is 6, which I originally started as 2nd, though. And I worked there till probably around May or the end of April 1, and got drafted in the Army. And stayed in the Army for almost 2 years. Then I came back and they hired me back. They had a ruling, if you went in the Army, you had your job back. And so I come back and I worked there till end of March of 1990.
So when you got drafted into the Army, what did you do in the Army?
I was the infantryman. I got, they sent me to Germany. We trained to go Japan, fight the Japanese, but about halfway through our training, they changed it to occupational. And war in Germany was already, they quit shooting over there. And so I was signed to Nuremberg, Germany, in the war criminal trials, where they hung 11 Germans, Hermann Goering and those. And I was a chauffeur for one of the prosecutors. I lived in the house with them and all, and drove them back and forth to the courthouse there in Nuremberg. Go with them on vacations and stuff like that.
Let's see, while you were in service or during your tenure at K-25, was there any famous people or notable people that you met?
At K-25?
Either at K-25 or while you were doing your service in the Army?
Weinberger or something. I can't remember. Bob Winkle was head of our department.
Robert Winkle?
Right.
We've interviewed him and
yeah, see, he's been dead a few years, I think. And
Winkle, we had dinner with him. You talking about Bob Winkle here?
Old man Bob Winkle?
Because he was like an operations manager, correct?
Yeah.
Or he was the facility manager.
He left K-25 and he went to Purdue, Kentucky. Went to work up there.
He's a taller gentleman, right? It was Robert Winkle, because we went last time we were down here last month. We went and had dinner with him.
How old a fella was he?
90 something.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had it he was dead. Maybe I'm wrong.
He's I'm trying to describe. How would you describe Robert Winkle?
Tall.
Yeah, he is tall, great big man.
Yeah.
What was he like? I'd like to hear what he was like.
He tried to be a rough fella, but all the way around, he was honest. He's just trying to get the work done. He had a job to do, and he done it.
Did you know him? I guess when he first came out here, I guess in the earlier years, he told me some outrageous stories when we were at dinner about sneaking in whiskey and some of his, I guess, adventures with that. I guess initially the secret city, I guess, there was, I guess there was prohibition too, really.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have any recollections like that.
No, I wouldn't. And his assistant was Joe Siswicki. I don't know what ever happened to him either.
We've interviewed him, I
Did he?
believe. Yes, I think we've had that name.
And that's about all I can remember their names right now.
What was Sawicki like?
Oh, he was just he was the type guy, whatever Bob Winkle had him to do, he'd do it. He was nice to the people. Of course, they had to be back then, because if they didn't like their job, got a rough going, they'd switch jobs and go somewhere else. They could do it easy.
What are some of your most vivid recollections or favorite things about the time that you spent out here at Oak Ridge and K-25?
I was sure proud when they let us move into these hutments instead of having to make that trip back and forth to Tellico Plains. That was something. And just get to work. Get a little, take home money. That was the main thing. Because when this thing started, TVA, was running. Of course, I was too young to get on the TVA. And a few people was working around there for TVA, but a lot of them quit that and started to work up here.
If someone were to come up to you and ask you what was the work that was done up here, say someone just has no idea about Oak Ridge or Tennessee or the Manhattan Project, how would you describe to them what the work was that was done up here?
I couldn't describe it much. It's more than what I've already described it, because we didn't care what was going on. We just worked to try to make a little money. We'd do anything they asked us to do.
Were you treated pretty well by your managers or the folks at Union Carbide?
You treated nice, everybody. Everybody treated the workers nice.
Was there anything in particular you disliked about working at K-25?
Well, no, not really. I've always been a type guy, if I was asked to do something, I'd do it and say nothing about it. And But I've heard other people gripe about things that I wouldn't say a word about.
When you started working here, was this after they had already dropped the bomb in Japan when you started working up here?
Well, no, it was. We didn't know anything about that. First time I was already in the Army, going through training when they dropped the bomb. It was Camp Blandon, Florida. Our captain come through and told us.
And on that day, what was it like the day that you found out or that you heard the bomb was dropped?
Oh, it was everybody was shouting and hollering going on, and we was really wanting to go to Japan, our whole outfit, because we was done trained and wanted to go to Japan to fight the Japanese. Then the big disappointment is when they told us we was going to Germany, occupational. That was a big disappointment, my whole outfit. When a young 18-year-old kid is trained to do something, they want to do it.
When you found out,
I'm sorry, can we sorry?
Okay, we're back. It was August 6th, I believe, 1945. When the bomb was dropped, did you link it to the work that was being done down here? Did you kind of know that it was related to that?
Yeah, they told us it was a Oak Ridge project. The captain made a big speech, and I don't know. And said the people that worked at Oak Ridge helped make the bomb that was dropped. Then we didn't hear no more about it. That was it. You just have to read it in the paper, newspaper, or whatever to find out more about it.
How do you think that history will look back on the Manhattan Project and what was done here?
Oh, I think it'd be a great thing. History. Something happened like that. It has to be. And in the short time they built it, and, they could never build anything like that these days and times.
How do you think they were able to pull it off back then?
I don't know.
After the Manhattan Project, a lot of people call the period, I guess from about 1948 to 1964, they call that the expansion program. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but can you kind of explain, I guess, what kind of work was being done at the facility after the Manhattan Project during that period? Or what was the expansion program?
The expansion, we had to redo a lot of those compressors and converters. They'd cut big holes in the pipe, 54-inch pipe, where you could crawl in there and go inside of them things and change the vanes, the radius on the vanes. Now that was a mean job. That was something other. Put on protective clothes, and if you had one place on your arm or something wasn't protected, you come out, you had a blister. It's burn. Or a lot of times it happened on your neck or something. That's how hot, well, that acid stuff in there is what did it.
And so this was actually, I guess, crawling into the big pipes that were part of the cascade type?
Yeah. That's right. It's go right into the system.
And so did you have to wear sort of like an oxygen type
Oh,
thing?
we had a mask, yeah. Just regular masks. In some cases now you had to wear them oxygen masks because the heat, if you went inside of those cells where it was so hot, there's places and there's 135 degrees. You had to go in there and work a lot of times. Like change a valve, go down in there or something. And the welders are working. We had an air conditioner up there and hold a hose on his back to keep him so he stay in there long enough to weld.
Sounds awful hot. So you really couldn't work for long periods of time.
No, well, first started didn't have that air conditioner. Then they come up with that, and the welders stay in there longer, or a mechanic, or whoever's working down in that inside the housing.
And so, what was the protective clothing like? Was it just to basically insulate you from the heat, or?
Yeah, just paper suits, sort of like. And you had hoods.
It sounds similar to something that, are you familiar with Jim Hackworth?
He's the one got me in on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked with him, and we was first married. He was our next door neighbor. And so I've known him ever since 1953 anyway. He went to work down there later on as a trainee and then built himself up. He went into supervision. Jim Hackworth's a great feller. He's a fine feller. Now, he's the one that called me and asked me if I'd do this.
Really?
I'm really not a person that likes to do this anyway. I'm more of a private person.
But he also told me about having to crawl into the pipes from time to time, I guess, that he called them Easter egg hunts. Are you familiar with that?
Called a what?
He said sometimes they had to have Easter egg hunts.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Tell me what an Easter egg hunt is.
Okay, if a compressor debladed, he'd go back in them pipes, and that's what they call Easter egg. You have to go in there and dig it out, find those pieces of blades, because they didn't want to cross over into another compressor and tear up the blades. I remember in K-25 building, when they first turned that over to us, we had to change out all the valves, and Jim was down with a grinder, grinding where the valve would fit in better, and he let that grinder get away and like cut his leg real bad. He didn't tell you about that, I guess.
No, he didn't.
He had a bad leg for a long time.
No, he didn't tell that story to me. So on the system itself, did you do like what describe to me what the different types of work were that you did? Did you do welding work or?
No, we didn't do welding. We done rigging, insulation, millwright work, pipe work.
What was the one you said before, pipe work?
Pipe work, millwright work.
What's that?
Well, that's like tearing down a compressor or something and rebuilding it.
How often did they have to rebuild compressors?
Well, they spoil. Well, you couldn't tell because they would. Some of them might last for years and years running, and other times maybe you'd fix one and a few days it's tore up again. And same way, millwright work covered changing out seals for those compressors. That didn't last, that classification didn't last too long because they changed it over to maintenance mechanic, and that covered all of it.
And then you said, what, pipe work after it? What was pipe work?
Well, that was replacing and using pipe to add on to whatever they needed to, or water line break, or something like that. It's be repaired.
How was, because my understanding is once the cascade was up and running, pretty much the whole thing was always running all the time. So how was maintenance performed? I mean, were you able to shut off certain sections of the whole thing, or how did you do it?
You shut a whole cell down of compressors and do the work on whichever one you needed to or whatever. Then you got through, they started it back up.
And so it was just kind of turning a couple valves?
Well, they just valve it off, valve that cell off and then shut it down, bypass it.
So probably at any point in time during this operation, there was always like a few cells that were down that were being...
That's right, there's something all the time. Maybe half a dozen down at the time. If they had a seal leaking, they could put up with a little leak, but if it got great, then they'd have to shut it down. Too much atmosphere going into.
So if there was a cell leak or something like that, it would, I guess all the cells, they had a housing around them, and that's why it was so hot inside the cells themselves, was because of the housing.
All of the system but the K-25 building. It was right out in the open, the whole thing's out in the open.
How come they didn't use housings on K-29?
Well, that was the first one they started building on them big compressors, and they didn't think they needed it. You couldn't, you and your buddy changing seal. One of you used to have Mountaineer. He's back here handing you tools, and you got to be familiar with your buddy, or he's got to be familiar with you, what you need next. Hand it to you. You couldn't talk. It's so much racket. Unless you just turn right around and cause half your body was up in the back end of that compressor, laying up in there on asbestos cloth, keep them getting burnt. And he'd have to reach you in what you needed next to get that seal out.
See, no one's ever told me how loud it was in there, but now that I'm thinking about it, it would have to be loud with all those compressors running.
You just couldn't hear a man talk at all. Then you get up above them compressors, up toward the top of the building. that's where the heat was. Boy, it was hot up there. I believe when they put the sprinkler system in there, construction did that. Some of the guys told me it's 135 degrees they worked up there in.
And is this up on the top floor, up on the...
Well, there wasn't no top floor in K-29. I was
okay.
talking about this 29, yeah. That was just from the compressors up. It was open up to the ceiling.
Okay, yeah, I have heard that K-29 was warmer, I guess. But I guess K-25, it wasn't as hot because of the housings, I guess. It helped contain the heat a little better?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, anywhere it was closer, is the heat was, she still had to go in there to work inside the housing. But outside, it was, you could talk to anybody without a lot of problem.
Then the heat didn't really transfer up so much to the pipe gallery or up to the operations floor. It wasn't hot up there.
It wasn't an operation floor. They could open the windows up and they had big fans going, so it was real comfy up there in K-25 building. Had asphalt floor to walk on.
So when K-25 was, put on standby in 1964, is that correct?
I couldn't say the date, but that sounds about right.
Okay. What did you do when the facility was put on standby?
Oh, we had to go in there and pull the seals out of the compressors. And close everything off. You know, make it where any of that gas that's left in there couldn't escape.
So you said pull the seals off the compressor. Is that every single compressor there?
Yeah.
How many compressors? I mean, ballpark.
I don't. Right now, I couldn't say. I think it's 12 compressors to a cell.
So we're talking a lot of compressors then.
Yeah.
How long did it take to do all that?
Well, they had a lot of guys. They brought in guys from different departments to help us out, and it didn't take long to. You could one or two men could probably get a half a dozen or maybe even a dozen one day, according to how fast you worked or something, or how much trouble you had getting them out. You work buddy system, two people work together.
Okay, he's going to switch out tapes real quick, and I got a few more questions I want to ask you before.